There are lots of ways to manually enter data into the website. To choose which of the methods you want, you need to look at your source documents or trip logs and determine what kind of records you have. Do you have odometer readings or totals by state? Do you want the website to help you by requiring certain things, or do you just want to get through the data as quickly as possible? Remember, there are a lot of ways to do data entry on the website, so if this one doesn't look like a great fit for you, then check out the other methods. This is what my trip logs look like, and these are actually pretty good. This guy has decent handwriting, and I know from experience that he doesn't usually have problems in the data. So I'm going to choose the trip log data entry method because I have odometers, and I know this guy's data is probably complete with no gaps. So if there's any jumps between California and Texas, for example, that's something I want the website to catch me and stop me and make me consider before I move on. So from the dashboard, first things first, you always want to make sure you're on the correct client, and then choose trip logs to get started. Now this page is designed after California's Publication 50 or IFTA guide, which says that your record-keeping requirements for distance include these 8 things. And the first thing we're going to collect is this information right here, the vehicle information, which you'll choose by selecting your unit from the drop-down menu. Now as soon as I select that vehicle, the website already knows your fuel type, your unit of measure, and also your fleet number in accordance with this data because you entered that in when you created this truck. The next thing we need is the begin trip data. Now that's all of this stuff here. So let's walk through it. First is the date, which will always default to today's date. If you're having any trouble entering this date, just use your delete key and start from scratch. This is in a 2-digit month, 2-digit day, 4-digit year format, so keep that in mind while you're typing. My data starts on June 1st. Next is the state your trip is starting in. The default value here will always be the base state for this account. Next is your odometer. Now if you've given us odometers before, then we'll bring forward the largest odometer you have here, but that may not always be what you're looking for. If you're entering in earlier data or if you have gaps, this odometer may need to change, and you can always change or overwrite what's here. So let's look at my trip logs again. And yeah, that odometer is totally off. It's at 100,000 miles, and my odometer for this trip is at 600,000 miles. So let me enter that odometer in. And we'll keep going. Next are the city and destination. Now these fields aren't required because we know your customers aren't always going to give you data the way the states request that they do. But do remember that the states are requesting it a certain way. Now I happen to have this data, so I'm going to enter it in. Finally here, I need to choose my logging method. Now remember my trip logs from earlier? They had odometers, but only at the state exit. So that's what I'm going to choose. And as soon as I do choose it, you'll notice that my first line of data, my begin trip line, was copied down here into the calculation area. Now as I add more lines of data, I'm going to do them down here instead of on that top line. So let me show you how that works. First, I want you to know that I'm not going to move my mouse for this whole thing. Okay, I'm going to use Tab and I'm going to use Enter keys to move from one field to the other and one line to the other. So I'm just going to leave my mouse right here for you to see how this works. Now let's see here. My first real line is on 6/2. And I'm still in California. Oops, didn't get that date quite right. So I'm going to Shift and Tab back, delete to clear the field, 06/02/2015, tab over. Now he's still in California, so I'm going to choose the C key on my keyboard, and it is automatically going to choose the first option. If I chose CO, it would go for Colorado, but if I choose CA or just C, it will go California. Next, I'm going to tab and enter my odometer, 679,450. And I'm going to tab into these note fields. These are just for my reference, and they're not going to be used for calculations. So to make my data entry go smoother, I'm just going to enter, and you'll see that that line went down to the second line. Let's do another one. Now the date here on this line is 6/03, so I'll tab again. I'm still in California. My odometer is 679,850, and I'm gonna enter to get down to the next line. Now my next one is Arizona, and I'm going to move my mouse here because I want you to see that the only options on the drop down menu are the states that touch California. So I couldn't choose Albuquerque by accident here. No fat finger mistakes for states that don't touch, because the drop down menu is not going to allow that. So I'll go ahead and choose Arizona, and then I'll enter over because I can enter or tab and get my next odometer, 680,250, and I'll enter to get to the end of the line. Now as you can see, the most recent line is always on top of this calculation area down here, so I can't lose my place. And I want you to think about something else here. This truly is an area where calculations are happening. So if I notice that all these odometers end in 0 and I think that's got to be a mistake, I can come down into one of these, double click on it, and change something. And that affects all the calculations that come after that change. And I just hit tab or enter for that change to take effect. Now let's try that again. I'm going to double click and I'm going to put that back to a 0 because that is what the customer gave me, and I'm going to enter and it's going to redo the calculations. And I can change anything on any of these fields. If this wasn't California, if this was actually Arizona, I could make that change here, no problem. Just choose it from the drop down menu and tab or enter for it to do the calculation. Next I want to show you this end trip section. Now just like the begin trip, most of these fields are optional, but they go hand in hand with the if to plan. Remember, they want to know where you ended up. So we'll say it ended on, use my delete key to clear that field, 06/04/2015 in California, and my odometer is 680,650, and my city is Torrance. Once I fill in this end trip information, I'm going to click Save, and you'll see that the page goes blank. That's a good thing. That does not mean your data is lost. Now I'm ready to do my next trip of data entry. So let's choose that same truck again and see it brought forward my largest odometer. I'm just going to change the date here. And I'm going to leave the city and destination blank this time, and I'm going to choose to enter in mileage instead of odometers. So now again, I'm not going to move my mouse. I'm going to leave it right here for you. I'm going to enter over to get to the state, and I'll type CA for California, and I'll enter my mileage of 450 miles, and enter to get to the end of the line. My next piece of data is in Arizona, and I'm going to tab. They had 325 miles there. Tab, enter to get to the end of the line. Same thing. Now, it does ask for the beginning and ending odometer, but if you don't have that information, that's fine. Just fix your dates. 06/06/2015. I'm going to say Arizona is where that trip ended, and I'm going to save my data. So the first thing I do after I enter trips in is I look the data over on View Edit. Remember, data entry is the most important part of the process because it's what everything else is built on. So if you have any questions about this page and how it works, please just let us know. We're here and we want to help.